Well, ladies and gentlemen, an interesting guest for me today because with me is Rob Hutchinson, the founder of DRSA. Now, Rob actually sets up a company that involves or specializes in public participation. And for those of you who don't know, public participation is mandated in South Africa. So all of those bull rubbish ideas and those laws that the ANC generally tends to pass, well, they usually fail on the basis that they didn't get involved with public participation. So Rob set up something to deal with that. Hello, Rob. How are you doing? It's nice to finally have you on my show. I mean, I know we've communicated for a number of years. Never actually had the opportunity to do a podcast.
No, this is first for me as well. It's been a viewer-only thing for me for quite some time. But yeah, it's good to be on a show that actually counts.
I'll hold you to that one. Right, so tell me a little bit about yourself. So I know you've had a bit of a career. You were a politician for a period before getting involved in public participation. Tell me a bit about who you are and where you came from and what you've done.
Where do I start? So many different roles I've played in my life. Maybe just the ones that count. So I got a history in advertising and marketing and brand strategy, and jumped out of that game must have been 12, 14 years ago now. I just couldn't stand it anymore. So found myself knee deep in civil society. It's what you kind of do when you've got nothing else to do. I sort of bounced around a few ideas, found something on Facebook and found some causes and just went balls to the wall and did what I needed to do. And then ETOLs came around, ETOLs in Joburg. And I started a movement called Proudly E-Tag Free, and that built up a fantastic following throughout Joburg, just convincing people to not get an E-Tag and therefore place that ETOL system under serious administrative burden, and which was designed to operate all electronically and automatically. So if you put manual administration in it, the thing would collapse. And it had such a fantastic following. Built up from there. Then I got in touch with Wayne Duvenage, and we started, or I got involved with ARTA at that stage. And then ARTA went through the courts. I was running the groundswell movement through various different initiatives and started doing bridge banner protests and so on. And the civil society bug just bit, man. It was just, this is my home. This is what I really feel good doing. And yeah, it just rocketed from there. I was one of the founding directors of ARTA, and then that lasted for quite a while. It was a fantastic journey there. Left there, started my own thing, which was focused on public participation. You know, the whole ETOL thing came about through lack of public participation and public consultation. I think throughout the whole thing there were only about 25 comments from the public before the gantries went up, and suddenly they appeared and nobody knew what it was about. So I based the idea on that. There's a serious gap in the market. Let's start an organization that facilitates public participation, makes the public aware of what's happening, allows the public to have the say, and then communicates that voice of the public directly through to government. That was in end of 2017, 2018. And then I launched the DearSA.co.za website, and the rest is history, man. Went through a few changes, a few company changes, bumps and speed bumps and learning curves along the way. But yeah, that's where I am today. Still doing it and still going strong.
So you did actually have a period.
Yes, I did. So
right?
when I was with ARTA, I did a lot of work with Deirdre Carter. She was the Deputy Secretary General of COPE. Just on the side, helping with strategy and so on. Together we did the Zuma Must Fall campaign, which was a roaring success. And then through that, I started training their councillors on how to use social media, and got to know everybody there. Got to know the back ends of political parties, how they work, and got to know the various positions and people within it, and made a few contacts there. And then Deirdre convinced me to become a member of COPE and then run for elections, the internal elections, which I did. And then surprisingly, I was voted in as Deputy Secretary General, number 4 from the top there, which was it took me quite surprised. But yeah, it was a fantastic time. I spent about 18 months in there. It was just before the 2019 elections. But yeah, what a learning curve. You learn so much. You learn why government doesn't work mostly. I think that was my biggest lesson from it all. Yeah, you can have meeting after meeting after meeting and talk about wonderful things, what you're going to do. But when it comes down to actually trying to do it, nobody has the initiative, know-how, or anything. Kind of comes to a standstill. You want to do something small, you've got to follow the bureaucratic path there. It takes forever and ever and ever to get anything done. And by the time you get something done, it's too late and nothing matters anymore. And I got frustrated with the whole internal politics thing. As soon as you reach up above councillor level, it all becomes about fighting with your, I want to say, comrade, and sitting right next to you. It's because it's all about yourself and fighting your way to the top, to a salaried position in Parliament. And that just didn't kind of work well with me either. So every political party suffers from it, internal fighting, factioning, and so on. And really, I came to a conclusion that politics is not for me, and bailed out of that after about 18 months. But having learnt a hell of a lot and made some incredible contacts and gained incredible insights into the behind the scenes of governance and politics, which just helped with the Dear South Africa .co.za initiative. So it was beneficial.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen now. We saw for a period where everybody thought that action, well, as you know, COPE was going to be the big thing, right? They were going to be the big thing. They just had Mbeki. He had just left the ANC. Left. I mean, he never really kind of formally joined COPE, but apparently he did, but he didn't, but he did.
Yeah, it's kind of an open secret.
And
yeah.
COPE was
Kind of, he was deeply involved with the formation
so
of COPE. Yeah, it's quite well known. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, COPE was slated to be the next big political party, right? And they had that elections, they won quite a good percentage, and everybody was like getting hopeful. Oh, maybe there's going to be an alternative to the ANC. And now, in hindsight, COPE's not really a thing. Why do you think that is?
The rumor, it started off as a rumor that there were infiltrators, ANC infiltrators within COPE, and it turned out that it wasn't a rumor in any way whatsoever. There was a concerted effort from the ANC to destroy COPE from within, and they succeeded. So, when COPE broke away from the ANC, they instantly got it was like a huge number of seats in Parliament, and they were soaring. It was the party that actually appealed to everyone across the racial divide, across everything. It was from the youth all the way to the retirees. Everybody related to COPE in one way or another. And the ANC saw it as a major threat. So a lot of ANC people left and joined COPE, and then there was a lot of pressure placed between Shiloh and Lakota. And in the public's eye, they were always butting heads. But the truth is, there were always instigators playing the two against each other. So eventually it just fell apart by design, and which was sad, really, really, really sad. And then 2019 came along, and COPE really looked like it was going to perform incredibly well. And then there's some major sabotage that happened internally, and part of their manifesto was changed on the printing press, and big investigation as to who did it. Suddenly COPE went from totally against expropriation without compensation to supporting expropriation without compensation, and that's somebody went into while the thing was on the printing press and changed it there. Deliberate sabotage, and then it created major media confusion, and it just fell apart from that point on. Really didn't do well there.
So, I mean, at some point in time, you obviously thought to yourself, well, there's this thing called DRSA, and like you had this idea of DRSA. I mean, where did that come?
Like I said, it was from the e-toll days. There was a lack of public participation there, and I'm convinced that if the public had been made aware of the e-tolls in a proper fashion and encouraged to participate and have their say and provide input on electronic tolling, the e-tolls wouldn't have even gone up. And I saw it with a number of other policies as well. It was just, I think something as City of Cape Town came up. I think it was the drought water charges that came up there, and there again they just tried to sneak them in, and then I got hold of them, set up a platform, and they were expecting about 200 voices from the public to come forward. Ended up sending 61,000 through, and then I thought, wow, this actually has potential, because the City of Cape Town had to acknowledge every single one of those submissions individually, because it's not like a petition where you can have 61,000 people voting against something and agreeing with the mandate of the petition, and then that's a single submission to government. The way I set it up is that every single comment is delivered as an individual submission. So you burden them down with amazing amounts of manual administration, which they have to by law go through. They have to consider it, and so on. They can't just reject one submission from a group of people. They have to reject 61,000 now. So what they ended up doing was kicking the can down the road, not implementing the drought water charges, and it was a major success. Just from what I saw at that stage was sort of virtual protesting. Getting out in the streets and rounding people up and waving placards and whatever, but actually engaging, flooding in email inboxes, flooding the systems, and direct communication with government. And it worked. So just expanded it from there on, from City of Cape Town to countrywide, national policy and so on, and it just took off from there.
Yeah. Where'd you get the name from, DRSA? I mean, it's a very specific name, right? So it's like you must have had an idea behind it.
The idea was simply because it was talking to government. So it was dear councillor, dear government, dear politician, dear whoever's listening to me. And then I just thought, well, it works well with democracy and equality and working with being democratic, engaged, active, and responsible, DEAR. So I kind of reverse engineered it there. It was just originally, it was dear councillor, but yeah, it stuck well. I think it works well because it is you as someone in the public writing directly to government and saying, dear politician, dear parliament, this is what I want. And in the backwards as well, it's a dear citizen, have your say on this policy. So yeah, it's it was just a luck and a play of words that it came about. Yeah.
So you originally set up DRSA, and then I think the first major success, tell me if I'm wrong, your first major success in terms of public participation was actually the expropriation without compensation amendment to the Constitution, right?
That's right,
the property
amendment to
clause.
Section 25, which exactly was the property clause. I put that out. I saw an opportunity there. Well, let's create a dialogue here. And once again, Parliament hadn't provided any proper means for people to have their say in written submissions. It was all public hearings and so on, leaving out quite a large group of people. Not everyone has the time to take off work to attend a public hearing. And do they really listen to you in public hearings or anything? No, nobody really knows. They seem to be very selective in what they did. So set up a campaign on the DearSAAfrica.co.za, sent it out to the database which we had gathered from a few campaigns previously, put it out over social media, and it just took off like wildfire. I think in the first round we sent about 280,000 individual comments through to the ad hoc committee, which was phenomenal. They couldn't understand what was going on, and I worked with COPE on that at that stage, and COPE provided resources so we could print out each and every comment individually, and deliver them to Parliament. I think we delivered about 2 tons of paper through to Parliament and left it in the boardroom, along with all the electronic and individual submissions. So yeah, it really took off from there. And then there were subsequent campaigns from that on other calls for comment. And in total, I think we sent through about 600,000 individual comments through to Parliament. And it was across the board. So it wasn't just people against expropriation without compensation. The end results were about 57% against, and the remainder for expropriation without compensation. So it was a good representation of all South Africans, and showed government exactly what can be done through proper public participation.
But ultimately, I mean, it didn't succeed, right? So, I mean, as you know, the amendment was ultimately voted down, mainly by the EFF. I mean, had the EFF actually got their way of the full custodianship of the state, all state land, not just, some of them that the government decided they were going to cherry pick, although even that was so vague, we all knew it would eventually be all state land. But had the EFF not voted it down, we essentially probably would have got the bill passed. And at that stage, what good? This is the question many people ask, right? What good would public participation have played?
Yeah. So that's a question I get often: is what is the point when Parliament can do what they want regardless? The truth is, Parliament can't do what they want regardless. If you have adequate public participation, adequate public dissent against something, and the good and valid reasons as to why a bill shouldn't be passed or should be passed, or in this case why the Constitution shouldn't be amended, you can take that to court afterwards. And what government normally does is they conduct public participation. No one in the public ever has access to it. Even through PI applications, you won't get the actual public participation. You'll get a summary report drafted by Parliament, but you won't have the actual stuff. So what DearSA Africa DearSA did is they create sort of a middleman in between, where you keep a record of all that public participation, and then you can use all that as substantial evidence and a fantastic structure and foundation to go to court and challenge government should they make the wrong decisions or not listen to the voice of the public. Look, at the end of the day, Parliament doesn't have to adhere to public participation. It's not a voting system. It's not like a referendum where the public decides on policy. But they do have to acknowledge and consider it. And if they can't prove that they considered what the court could rule as valid arguments against or for a bill, then they'll have to go back to the drawing board and start the process again.
Interesting. I mean, obviously the same question would then apply to NHI, right? So, I mean, obviously there would have been substantial public participation in NHI, but that bill was ultimately signed. Now, as far as I'm currently understand, public participation isn't one of the grounds on which the NHI Act is currently being challenged. There's quite a few, but public participation isn't one.
100% correct.
Am I right,
yes,
or wrong?
Which is surprising, in some instances and not in others. So there's 2 grounds that you can use public participation. One is there was the adequate public participation before the decisions were made, and it all hinges on what is adequate. Adequate doesn't mean 1 million people had their say. Adequate means, did public speak to all sectors of society, consider all the possibilities and the viewpoints from all different sectors of society? Did Parliament explain it properly to different people? Did they use all languages? There's so many angles you can go in under the term of adequate public participation. And also, it's what they talk about is in the Constitution is meaningful public participation. So what comments were put through by the public? Were they meaningful? Why did Parliament ignore meaningful public participation in this sense? So yeah, you can go through that, and also you can go through voices of the public. Combine it all into one section. Is Parliament making a decision that is detrimental to South Africa? And then you weigh up the odds. What does the public think? it can ultimately end up in a referendum in extreme cases. Although I doubt we'll ever see another referendum in South Africa on a national level. I think 94 was the last time we saw that. Was it 94, 92, 92, 93, somewhere around there.
No, I think it was 92, wasn't it? 92 was
That's
the
right,
referendum,
yeah.
94 was
So-
the elections.
But yeah, in extreme cases, it can be if there's a huge disparity between what a parliament has decided on the reasons they're using to what the public sentiment has put through not just through your average citizen, but through proper research institutes, think tanks, professional voices, and so on. Then something has to be done, and the courts would ultimately decide on that.
Yeah, now there is actually an instance where public participation was actually quite helpful and did actually result in an action. It's debatable as to what that action is, whether it just been, as you very kindly described it, as kicking the can down the road. Maybe it was just that. But it was actually in relation to the Firearms Amendment Act, the original one, which is now obviously resurfaced in this new bill that is supposedly being pushed forward by Nedlank. But the participation on that original bill, specifically around the clause to remove the rights, one is the rights of self-defense. So if you look at the preamble of the current Firearms Control Act, it actually has a preamble, and in the preamble it says that the whole thing is about self-defense in the public and the individual's right to self-defense, like the right to self-defense. And that's led many individuals to argue that we've effectively got, should we call it like Second Amendment type rights, even though we don't. And obviously the new thing now is that they want to take self-defense out of the bill and then make it very clear that the rights of firearm ownership isn't a right because of like a Second Amendment. It's actually a privilege conferred upon you by the state, and it's at the state's discretion. Now, when that original suggestion was made, I think, you'll have to forgive me if I'm wrong, you'll have to tell me, but I think you had like 250,000 submissions, and from memory they actually collapsed the police's systems, like with all the incoming feedback, and ultimately they decided to shelve that amendment for that administration. So you could argue that was the first time public participation actually did something.
No, 100%.
Is that correct?
But what it showed government is that should they proceed with this amendment, there will be a major kickback from all corners of society, from some seriously influential groups and individuals, right down to the general man on the street. And I think in total, I was actually going through it the other day, there's about 198,000 in the first round, and then some 60,000 in the second round that went through. And of course, then I had a record of absolutely everything that had gone through, and we could go to them and say, you can't dispute the numbers. Here's what the public said. This is how many people said this, and this is what they said. And the government looked at it, and we didn't provide any report or anything like that. We let them trawl through 250,000 individual comments, and then prove to the public that they had done that, which of course took them years to do so. So yeah, that tied it up, and then from the sixth administration, right? Then there were the elections, and the bill was pushed aside because they hadn't completed it. Seventh administration came around, and they had to restart it from scratch. The public participation, the consultation, and everything else once again, which is where we are right now. They've talking about it. There was a presentation to Nedlac last week on the bill, and all they're doing is talking about the 2021 bill, which everyone's already done, had they say. Public participation has been done and dusted on that. So it's taken them from 2021 until now to go through all of that, get their ducks in a row, and come up with something to try and push it forward once again. There's nothing really out now to comment on, and I think jumping the gun might be a bit premature. Getting the public to have their say on anything now. I mean, there's nothing to say for sound. No,
It's not actually a formal bill at this point, is it? It's a discussion on what might
correct.
go into a bill.
And that's the process where
It's
it starts. It starts with a green paper. It starts with public consultations around a green paper, then moves to a white paper, more public consultation around that, talks with other groups, workshops, which is I think what NEDLAC had last week was a workshop, and then from there on it will go through to parliamentary committees, through to other groups, through to legal, and then only then will it appear as a bill published in the Gazette, and only then can the public really have their say on this new bill with the amendments, whatever they might be. Only then can you have a say on what's going out, and that having a say before that is really a waste of time, because there could be many points where you can have a say, and the public will just get tired of saying the same thing over and over and over again, and you don't know. You might disagree with the bill as it is right now, only to find out that there's some agreeable points in the final published version, or the final draft, which means that everything that you've sent through or gathered, or information that you've gathered, is absolutely pointless and somehow playing right into government's hand by agreeing or disagreeing with the favourable bill, or the other way around. So you've got to be careful and just get the timing right, and encourage the public to just be patient. This is in the pipeline. It is coming, but several organisations in civil society are on top of this, and you will get an opportunity to have your say.
So obviously the current big thing I think on your platform at the moment is around the apartheid bill, which actually isn't really a bill at the moment. I think it's an intention to draft a bill, and they're suggesting that it potentially has all the usual suspects saying, yes, we'll back this, even though the bill itself, were to be drafted, given the intentions that they say it should have, sounds like it will probably be unconstitutional.
Completely unconstitutional. It'll pretty much remove your freedom of association, freedom of expression completely, because anybody who is seen as a supporter of Israel, and support is also loosely defined, you could be supporting them on social media. I support Israel on social media, and suddenly you are a criminal should this bill become law. Just to correct you there, Byron, it has actually been drafted. It's been drafted in conjunction with. You won't find a copy
of it.
Al Jamar have got the bill. It's been drafted in collaboration with Parliament's legal committee and legal department, and it's waiting for the notice of intention to introduce to be voted in Parliament. So that's the process they have to go through. If it's a private member's bill, which is what this is, then they have to first present a notice of intention to introduce this bill and give a slight summary of the content of the bill, which is what they've done at this stage. That goes into Parliament, and then Parliament will decide whether it has merit, and then proceed it and then allow it to be introduced into Parliament, at which point it gets discussed throughout parliamentary sittings, and right down to committee, the appropriate committee. But the bill has been drafted. I saw an interview with Kenny Hendricks, who's the leader of Al Jamahar, and it's there waiting to go ahead. It's got a lot of support from ANC, from the EFF, from the Good Party, PAC, Al Jamahar, obviously the usual left-wing suspects, yeah. And given that status, my feeling is that it is going to be allowed to be introduced to Parliament. At which stage, I think it's quite a dangerous step to go for. They have called for comment on it, like they have to. The Speaker of the House actually calls for public comment on it, on the notice to introduce. So that's what I'm encouraging now, is people to have this say on the notice to introduce this bill. Should it be introduced to Parliament? Should it go further? And really, based on what we have on interviews, on what Al Jamar has revealed, and the contents of the bill, it's an extremely dangerous bill for any South African, not just the South African Jews or South African Israelis or those who hold dual passports, but any South African worldwide, not just in South Africa but globally.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to understand. Now, I keep saying this actually on my own channel, and everybody's like, "Oh, Israeli shell." So, nothing to do with that. But what you have to understand is that, and it's a lawyer's habit, right? Lawyers know that you can't draft a law with only one set of intentions, because the law will inevitably be exploited to have a wide applicability, which is why you need the safeguards in place to stop it having that applicability. So, I think the current notice of intention is they're trying to sync it up to this idea of this global apartheid. We don't like these type of things, the segregationist type policies, and then they're saying that anybody who supports or promotes apartheid type activities is subject to a criminal offence. Now, again, there's no safeguards in there, but the intention is obviously you have to see who's putting it forward, right? What is Al Jamar? What is Al Jamar? Well, pro-Palestine. What else are they? They're anti-Israel. And what do they class Israel as? An apartheid state. So it's easy to connect the dots and say, well, Al Jamar is trying to criminalize support of Israel under the guise that it's an apartheid state. Okay, cool. Got you. We understand where they come from. Who else in South Africa are accused of apartheid? Well, Iranian are accused of apartheid because they live separately. So anybody saying that they support Irania could effectively be subject to a criminal offence. What about AfriForum and Solidarity when they say that they don't like certain BE or transformation laws? What are they accused of? Perpetrating apartheid. So does that mean that they're subject to criminal offence? Do you see how the wide applicability here could then be used or exploited against the Republic as a whole? Which is why the topic is so important.
You hit the nail on the head there. So Al Jamar, as I said, are purely promoting the Israel as an apartheid state angle of the bill. However, the mere fact that it's got support from the EFF and the ANC brings in the stuff you just mentioned right now, and it is an extremely valid point. That's why I said it affects every South African out there. It's a dangerous bill. It is completely and wholly unconstitutional. There's no way that this could have even been allowed to be passed by the parliamentary legal team. Genief Hendricks says that they developed in collaboration with them. I don't understand how they could even go as far as to say that yes, this meets constitutional muster, because it certainly doesn't. But does that mean? He's even said that no, this will supersede the constitution and it will be this, and it applies to international law. But you can't.
Yeah, we can't supersede the constitution without a constitutional amendment.
Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Nothing can supersede the constitution in any way possible. So how things are going to go with this?
Except if you're an Islamist, because that idea, and it was something that I learned quite succinctly in Israel, right? So I spoke to many individuals when I was in Israel, and somebody actually described the whole apartheid state angle to me actually very well. And once they did, I was like, okay, I get it. And they said that Israel is currently 21% Muslim. Obviously, the rest of it is Jewish. I think 6% is Christian, and the rest is Jewish. So you could say that it's roughly around 75%, maybe 74% Jewish. They say that Israel defines itself as a Jewish state, which means that if you're not Jewish, if you're Muslim, that the state itself doesn't necessarily apply or protect you in the first instances because it's not set up for you. It's a Jewish state. Okay, I kind of get the angle. I'm sure we both do. There's 50 Muslim states around the world that define themselves as Muslim caliphates. They literally define their supreme law as being Islamic and the Quran. So will the apartheid law then apply to the 50 Muslim states globally? I would like to know.
Fantastic angle. It's a great question, which I definitely think should be put out to major debate. I'd love to have a debate and discussion like that with the leader of of Al Jamaah and pose that question directly to him: is are they by the definition? Because remember, they're basing this on the 1973 UN statute, that declaration against apartheid. All they're doing is that they're trying to localize that and domesticate that into South African law. So by that definition, in the UN definition of apartheid, are those 50 states, Islamic states, guilty of apartheid, not per the South African definition, but by the United Nations definition of 1973? Let's thrash that one out and see why the double standards. If you introduce this bill, can South African lawyers then hold Islamic supporters of those 50 states guilty of the crime of apartheid? Are they shooting themselves in the foot? Great question.
Now, you see, it's interesting because let's apply the rule. Like I learned that in Israel, right? So, as I said, in Israel, that was one of the arguments they made to me. And when I listened to it, I was like, yeah, okay, I kind of get what you're coming from. Let's apply the same standards. Can Jews buy property in Lebanon? No. Can Jews buy property in Syria? No. Can Jews buy property in Jordan? No. Those states are the very states that surround Israel as states. There are also states that South Africa doesn't have an issue with, but they are openly, just through property ownership, which, as you know, in South Africa was a major issue around apartheid, was around the land ownership. So just in the land ownership patterns, those three states, just as a de facto, are committing apartheid by the ANC's definition. So does that mean that the Apartheid Act, if any of these individuals say something positive about Lebanon, Jordan, or Syria, that they're actually criminal? They need to be locked up.
I mean, I think it's a hell of a grey area, which definitely needs to be ironed out in clear definitions. It's kind of along the same lines as
I've got a better one.
As racism. What is the definition of racism? Is can a black man be a racist? Yeah, it's the same question, isn't it?
But I got a better one than that. No Israeli or Jew can buy property in Gaza. So does that mean that when they're all pro-Palestine, that they're committing criminal offences because they're actually all being pro-apartheid states? This is their definition. It's not mine. I'm not making this up. It's their definition.
The Jews for Gaza movement know this? Because it'd be great to inform them of that.
Unfortunately, Jews for Gaza is a bit like chickens for KFC. You know, it's like, you know, what can I say? So what's the future look
looks
like
good,
for
Byron.
DRSA?
Really does. I took a little bit of a break due to personal reasons and other business reasons, and just shift of focus. But you know, like I said earlier on, that bug bit many years ago. I can't get rid of it. It's in my DNA. So DRSA is continuing. I've got major plans on expansion. I'm sure you've seen a couple of things out there becoming a lot more vocal. A complete rework on the platform itself, and more of a shift back to what it was originally, where not just a platform where you have your say, but a platform that actually takes the voice of the public further and challenges governments, municipalities, and so on public policy and the changes that government intends to make. So becoming a proper, a full-fledged non-profit, non-governmental organization as it used to be, and of course not just locally, but there's been a lot of interest from other countries and other regions as well to implement this a similar idea into their regions as well. So the whole idea of DEAR being democratic, engaged, active, and responsible is now on the precipice of being globally. I say that with great anticipation, but yeah, let's hold thumbs.
Well, I must say, Rob, thanks for joining me and actually talking to me about DRSA, why you get involved in it, what it does, who you are. I think it's nice to see public participation return in a good way to the public environment. So don't be a stranger, and feel free to jump on and have a chat with me about any of the crazy bull rubbish that the ANC is doing anytime.
Will. And there's so much to talk about, as there always is with our government. Thanks so much, Byron, for your support.
No worries. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to actually check out some of the campaigns, like the apartheid campaign, check out in the comment section below. And until next time,